idea that you would scapegoat women and children or even men who are desperately fleeing from one country into another to leverage some sort of demands out of government is just unacceptable. So we want to call out the protest and say that's not on. They have to call down the protest, but equally we want to call out Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael for their disgraceful handling of the housing crisis and public services in this country. We don't have enough GPs, we don't have enough school places, we don't have enough beds in hospitals, etc. And this is the legacy of the Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael cabal in one of the richest countries of the world. So we're going to call them out on that. And also, I am here to condemn the behaviour of local TDs and representatives who back up the scapegoating of migrants. It is outrageous. All right.
Reid, can I just ask, you mentioned accommodation and housing. Do you not think that by linking the two, you're kind of involving the people who are saying that Ireland is full and, we don't have room for any of these migrants? Do you not think that by linking those two, you might not mean to be, but you are emboldening them a little bit?
No, I don't. I think that the accommodation and housing crisis is the creation of the government. Migrants coming here is not the creation of the government. Obviously, this is a situation that's here to stay on the planet. People are moving in great numbers because of climate change, wars, persecution, etc. And the reason that the far right and others can use the housing crisis is because it is true, people can't get homes. The homeless lists have increased, and that's a fact. But neither are they ever intended putting people into empty buildings as they do with migrants into office blocks or empty buildings such as the hotel in Roscrea. That was never the intention of dealing with the housing crisis, but they're failing to deal with it. And we do have a real problem here that as long as the housing crisis continues, it will be used as a reason to scapegoat migrants. But we're calling that out and saying it's not on. We have to welcome them here. And without migrants in this country, we wouldn't have a half-functioning health service. They run our hospitals, they drive our buses, they deliver our food. They actually are very useful, and we want to see them being given the right to work as soon as they come into the country.
It's been over a month now since the Dáil has sat. In that time, an incredible almost 10,000 Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli onslaught in Gaza, amongst them about 4,000 children, with the highest rate of civilian casualties in any conflict in this century. And we're saying very clearly, and we'll be saying it order of business, that the Dáil must not have business as usual this week. We cannot avert our eyes from the genocide that is being committed on the people of Palestine. We propose that there be a debate this week on South Africa's case against Israel in the International Court of Justice for the crime of genocide. We first raised this in a Dáil motion in November, and we say that there must be a debate this week on the court case, on the genocide, and a vote on whether the Irish state should join in, should intervene in the case on the side of South Africa in opposition to this genocide. That was opposed at the Business Committee, and so we're going to be raising it very forcefully today at order of business, that we cannot simply continue as if this genocide is not taking place. I think many Irish people were very proud to see the Irish barrister Brynne Ní Gráillí making the case very, very strongly about the 250 people, Palestinians, being killed every day, making the case about the 10 Palestinians who are having legs or arms amputated, Palestinian children having legs or arms amputated every single day, mostly without any anaesthetic. But that contrasts, that pride in how she behaved and the other lawyers for the South African side behave, contrasts very badly with the behaviour of the Irish government, where when Leo Varadkar was first asked about this, he really poured cold water on the idea that it was genocide, really implying that it was not genocide, and saying very definitely that Ireland will not be joining this case. I think many Irish people were absolutely appalled by that. We saw well over 50,000, maybe 100,000 people on the streets on Saturday, I think in part provoked by the impetus given by the court case and people saying Ireland should now intervene. We know that countries can intervene. Germany has intervened on the side of Israel to say that this is not genocide. And we think there's an absolute obligation on the Irish state and the Irish government to join in this case, to intervene, And so we're going to be insisting very strongly that today that debate happens this week and that the Dáil gets to decide. The other point we want to raise in relation to Palestine, as well as the call, which we've repeated, for the Israeli ambassador to be expelled and the call for sanctions on Israel, is obviously St. Patrick's Day is coming up. Traditionally an occasion when the Taoiseach presents a bowl of shamrock to the US President, Joe Biden, in this case, and when other Irish political leaders go and meet Joe Biden, the US President, and other members of the US administration. And we want to say, we'll be calling on all politicians, that no politician should go and meet with genocide Joe Biden, should meet with members of the US administration in the US for St. Patrick's Day, as long as this genocide is continuing and as long as the US is providing huge amounts of military and political support for it. We have to send a signal that Ireland, as the vast majority of the people in this country, Ireland says no to this genocide, opposes what is happening and opposes the US support for it. So it's important that the government and all politicians say we will not be going to shake hands with Joe Biden or other members of the US administration.
So does that mean that no minister should travel to the United States for St. Patrick's Day?
No minister should be meeting any member of the US administration for St. Patrick's Day. So Joe Biden, Secretary of State, if they're going to San Francisco and they're participating in a parade and having a mayor...
Political leaders in San Francisco who are supportive of Israel.
It's people who are part of the US administration is what we're saying.
Government.
The US government, exactly.
Right. And in terms of other countries that are supportive of Israel, Germany, for example, should they not be going to Germany to meet with political leaders?
I mean, Joe Biden, and it's a key event that happens every year, is like the Irish go to meet Joe Biden. Joe Biden uses... What?
You called him St. Joe Biden.
On St. Patrick's Day, the Irish go to meet the President of the US, hand over the shamrock. That's obviously used in America for the benefit of Irish Americans, for a political point, is enormously symbolic, and we think this year that should not happen. The US is the number one supporter of what is happening in Palestine right now. Without the US support, it could not be happening. So we think that's a crucial call that we're making on the government and on other politicians.
Well, Paul, is that not cutting off your nose to fight debate a little bit? Would like Leo Varadkar not be better going into the White House when he's having that chat with Joe Biden, going, you really don't support what you're doing, and trying to talk to him rather than just taking completely... It's meaningless, really. It's not really going to change anything, is it?
So Leo Varadkar should pick up the phone today and try to have a call with Joe Biden as quick as possible to say that we do not support this, and to tell you what, we're going to stop the use of Shannon Airport by the US military. But if this genocide is still continuing and the US is still supporting it, which unfortunately is very likely, we should not have this symbol of support for the US administration by the handing over of shamrock. That would send a signal. The vast majority of Americans support a ceasefire, are opposed to what Israel is doing, and it would send a signal that actually worldwide people are standing against this, and the Irish in particular are standing against this. So I think it would have an impact symbolically in the US and around the world.
Would it not have more of an impact?
I asked Meredith McDonald, would she be in favour of boycotting? And obviously she travels extensively in the US, as does other members of the party around St. Patrick's Day. And she said she wouldn't be in favour of that. She didn't see that it would have any impact. Would you be calling on the likes of Sinn Féin also, who meet with the US administrators also to do that?
Yes, I think the government and politicians in this country should not be meeting with members of the US administration with Joe Biden on St. Patrick's Day in the US. I think that's very important, and I would say that I hope Sinn Féin changes their position on this. I think this is a key demand of the movement from below. Obviously Sinn Féin did change their position under pressure on the question of expelling the Israeli ambassador, so if enough pressure comes from below, we're hopeful that Sinn Féin will shift position on that, and that in turn will add pressure onto the government to change their position as well. I better just let some of these other in, right?
Can I just ask a quick question? By the same token, if this is the new human rights position, should the Taoiseach have lunch with the Chinese Premier today? China is accused of extremely serious human rights violations.
Yeah, we're not supporters of the Chinese administration. We think the idea of shutting down Phoenix Park so you can have this dictator in who is guilty of gross human rights is quite a disgusting thing to be doing. No question about it. We don't think really you should be meeting people like that. Obviously, this particular thing in terms of St. Patrick's Day is like a worldwide event. It is noted worldwide. It's worldwide media. It would be very significant for the Irish government to withdraw from that.
And just on that, briefly, it's an election year in Ireland. Whether it'll be a general election, we'll see. It's certainly an election year in the United States. And if the Taoiseach was to openly, publicly say to the US administration and Joe Biden that we will not travel as long as you're giving your backing to Israel carrying out a genocide, it's a tight election race in the United States, and it would represent a real pressure point on Biden. I don't think there's any question about that. Okay, so I want to talk about the government's U-turn on work permits, and briefly I want to make a comment about Páirc Uí Chaoimh. So in terms of work permits, there's a new minimum rate coming in today, 30,000 per annum. People working in meat processing, in butchers, horticulture workers, language skills specialists will benefit from this. The one group that is not set to benefit is the group that have campaigned and agitated for the change, which is qualified Indian nurses who are here in the Irish healthcare system, working as healthcare assistants and working as home care workers. Their current minimum is 27,000. It means that they don't meet the threshold for bringing their spouse to this country. It means that they're doing stressful and difficult work in the Irish Health Service on their own, without the support of a partner, without their families. Can't even ring their kids to say goodnight oftentimes because their working hours clash with the bedtime for the kids back home in India with the time difference that is there. It was agreed by the Minister Neil Richmond, that they would get the 30,000, which would entitle them to bring their spouses over. But the Minister has done a U-turn on that. He's broken his word. He's gone back on that promise and has said that it is delayed. And there has been discussions with the nursing homes representative organisation. They've had discussions with them. The nursing homes have lobbied the government, and the government have done them a favour. But Migrant Nurses Ireland, who represent the healthcare assistants, wrote to the Minister and asked to have a meeting with the Minister. And he hasn't granted them a meeting. So he's seen the representatives of the nursing homes, and he hasn't seen the representatives of the healthcare assistants doing crucial work in our health service. That's a disgusting decision by this government. And it should be reversed, and they should agree to meet with the representatives of the migrant nurses immediately. I want to make that point strongly. Just on the Páirc Uí Chaoimh thing, this state funds the GAA, funds Páirc Uí Chaoimh, has made direct grants for Páirc Uí Chaoimh to the tune of millions of euro. It should be a condition. It should be a condition of the GAA receiving that money that they don't rename stadia after private commercial interests. And Micheál Martin has been huffing and puffing about this over the last day or two. He should have been thinking about this in advance and closing that door that is still open there. And this is a bigger issue than a GAA issue. It's an issue for the whole of society, to be honest. Are you going to have a situation where everything in society has its price, where commercial interests can buy and twist to their own ends any entity in society that they wish? What's next? That Patrick Street in Cork is renamed Apple Avenue? That the Cork City Hall, burnt down by the Black and Tans in 1920, be renamed as the Tato City Hall? This is not the way that Irish society is going, and there needs to be a debate about that. But for starters, the government need to move very quickly in terms of the issue of funding and saying that this is not on.
Can I just put you up on that? Wexford Park, Cusack Park, Cullen Park, Nolan Park, Kingspan Breffni Park, all of these have had their stadium rights bought out. Why is it only now that it's a problem?
I think you're making
Cork issue, because it's some Cork preciousness.
There's no Cork preciousness, Micheál. The issue is front and centre in Cork at the moment, and public representatives should speak to the issue. I think you've made the point well for me. This is a process is a process that's underway and that needs to be stopped. What's next? Are you going to have super value Croke Park? Where does it end? And it's a bigger issue than the GAA. What are you going to have? Kerrygold O'Connell Street. We could have a bit of fun with this one. Let's draw the line with super value park equiv.
This
All
was
right?
raised in the cabinet yesterday, and that idea was floated, I think, by a number of ministers that there should be a free work limit. Are you saying that they're a bit late to think about this, but would you, I suppose, support any sort of idea that comes down the line?
Well, we've heard the talk. Now let's see the action. I think the action is coming late. This should have been done a long, long time ago. But they need to move on it now, and we need action, not words. Okay?
Look, I know we've covered a lot of issues, but I do want to just signal one other issue that we have been campaigning on for years, but there's been a very important development over the new year, and that is on the issue of the Irish film industry. The WRC published its findings on the cases taken by 38 film workers, film crew, who claimed they had been blacklisted by the most prominent Irish film production company, Metropolitan Films, who have received tens and tens of millions, in fact hundreds of millions, of public money over many, many years. And the WRC has found in favour of these workers and given the biggest award, I think, or one of the biggest awards that the Workplace Relations Commission has ever given to a group of workers for breaching their rights under the fixed term workers legislation and other employment legislation. These workers were blacklisted because they asserted their rights. Now, the reason this is important is because we have, and we brought the reports have been produced by the Budget Scrutiny Committee, we have campaigned for years to get the government to address what is the systematic breach of workers' rights in the film industry that has been going on for years and which is in breach of the legal conditions for the public subsidies that go to the Irish film industry. The Irish film industry gets €100 million a year approximately in Section 481 tax relief, but that tax relief is conditional, legally conditional, on quality employment and training and on the meeting of all employment rights for workers. And now we have a finding which shows that there has been systemic breaches where the film producer companies were denying their legal responsibility as the employers to the workers who work on these films and hiding behind designated activity companies pretending they weren't their employer and suggesting these workers were freelance when in fact many of these workers had worked for decades for that same film producer company. And what's important is all of the other film production companies are doing exactly the same. And it's not just me saying it, they have come in and stated in front of Dáil committees that they don't have any employees, right? And this is now we have a very, very serious finding. So we are demanding that the government now must thoroughly investigate this, and no company, film producer company, that is in breach of the rights of film workers should be getting a single cent of public money until they guarantee the rights of film workers and ensure that they get their rights, particularly under the fixed term workers legislation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.